Welcome, everyone, to this very special Meet the Real Leaders event. I am Julie Van Ness, President of Real Leaders, and I am delighted that you are joining in with us today. As some of you already know, we will be hosting these events on a regular monthly basis. And if you missed the opening slide, you can find the upcoming featured leaders on our website and also posted during today's event. A few simple housekeeping rules to bear in mind. Please mute your mics. Please also know that we will be doing a couple thank yous during screenshots during the presentation to thank the speakers later, but not during our breakout groups. And lastly, please type in the chat where you're coming from. It's really nice to see the international audience. Okay, before we dive in, I'd just like to take a brief moment to say this. Our first guest, Suzy Amis Cameron, who doesn't know this yet, has really affected my life. After watching the documentary, The Game Changers, in which she was an executive producer, then learning about her advocacy work with OMD, One Meal a Day campaign, I made a conscious decision to dramatically change my food choices. Besides the incredible energy that I've obtained transitioning to plant-based focus, I feel much more in sync with the planet and my own health. And for that, I sincerely thank Suzy. I've told everyone I know to watch it. And now I'd like to introduce to you our founding editor, Grant Schreiber, who will be asking all of the fantastic questions today. Grant?
Thank you, Julie, and welcome, Suzy Amis Cameron. Thank you for joining Meet the Real Leaders today to give us your insights on the business case for plant-based food. Suzy is an author, former actress, environmental leader, and executive producer of the hit documentary, The Game Changers. For the past 30 years, she has dedicated herself to learning all she can about how best to care for our fragile planet. And the more she's discovered over the years, the more she's realized how our health and actions are intertwined with that of the earth. Suzy is particularly passionate about plant-based foods as a solution for climate change. And she is the founder of the One Meal a Day plan as a solution to this, which she'll share with us today. According to recent reports, the global market for plant-based meat alternatives is projected to reach 450 billion by 2040. And we've seen companies such as Beyond Meat trade with a market cap of 9 billion, and companies like Impossible Foods hit a valuation of 4 billion in its latest fundraising round. These are obviously numbers to take note of and point towards where the opportunities lie. Suzy, we look forward to hearing from you on why plant-based foods are the next big business opportunity and how everyone here today can adopt these strategies in their own businesses. Thanks once again for joining us at a crazy 4 a.m. in New Zealand, and welcome.
Thank you so much. I've actually really been looking forward to this, and hi to everyone. And yes, it's pitch black, dark out here. We're actually going into winter here. But I'm really excited. And Julie, thank you so much for sharing that. I love to hear those stories, and I love to hear that, when people start feeling better and making conscious choices, not only for their health, but for the planet as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Right. So Suzy, tell us why plant-based foods are the next big business opportunity from your perspective. You've been working in this area for quite some time.
Yeah, it's been an amazing journey. So my husband and I watched Forks Over Knives in 2012, actually May 6th, 2012. I watched it, and then I took it to him, and I forced him to sit down and watch it without knowing what he was watching. And by the time we finished, by the time we went from the TV room into the kitchen, he basically said we shouldn't have any more animal products in our house. And from that moment on, we cleaned out our kitchen, and, it was kind of overnight for us. But what we realized very quickly was that not a lot of people want to make changes that quickly, which is why OMD kind of came into being. And that came into being from transitioning the school that I founded, Muse School, which is early childhood through 12th grade. And it was the first plant-based school in the nation. And we ultimately, came up with OMD from that because we were getting a lot of pushback from people saying that they didn't want to be vegan and they didn't even want to do meatless Mondays because they thought it was the most horrific thing to go for a whole day without meat. And we said, people, it's okay. You can feed them what you want for breakfast and for dinner. It's one meal a day. It's OMD. And that just started the journey. And what we have found, to answer your question, is that from 2012, it was not easy to find plant-based alternatives. They were few and far between. And, the business was really just like making little incremental increases. And what has happened since 2017 has been astronomical. The Good Food Institute actually has started releasing data around it. And every year it's increasing by double digits. Plant-based foods is the fastest growing sector in the food industry.
That's amazing. And when we last spoke, Suzy, you had some amazing facts.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, for instance, and I actually, because it's kind of, I think that's the other amazing thing is that the statistics are changing so quickly. I mean, I'm updating my numbers probably every 3 to 4 weeks, but so plant-based meats have grown just in this past, couple of years by 33%. And whereas retail meats, the real meat that is out there is growing by 5%. And I think, the other thing too is the companies that lead in this, that are really on the out front, that are really watching what consumers are wanting, is they will the ones that will be staying relevant. They will be the ones that will thrive. For instance, dairy, and here I am in the dairy capital of the world. Dairy is shrinking by 5% annually. Plant-based milks, again, is growing by double digits. This is a new one. 41% of U.S. households are purchasing plant-based milks, which is pretty astounding. 15% of U.S. households are purchasing plant-based meats. So it's like you said, it's by 2040, the plant-based industry will be at 450 billion. So there are so many opportunities for companies to be making investments in the plant-based industry. And, the great thing about that, it's not just about making money. I realize that, for CEOs out there, the bottom line is the bottom line. But now there is all kinds of environmental responsibility, social responsibility. And just by bringing plant-based foods into your companies, into your culture, you will be making a huge difference in the environment and in the health of your community and your bottom line.
There's so many people who look at climate change and global warming as a problem that's just so big. Where do I start? Would this be a good place to start?
Absolutely. And, that's, another piece of OMD, which I think a lot of people don't realize. So animal agriculture is the second leading cause of greenhouse gases and climate change, more than all transportation combined. There was an article about 2 months ago, talking about creating biofuels for jets, which is great. We all love to travel. We all, love to go and see our families or, go to interesting countries. the what was fascinating to me was that the airline industry accounts for 4% of the carbon emissions, and animal agriculture is 14.5. So just by changing, and this is where OMD comes in, but one person changing one of their meals a day to a plant-based meal for 1 year saves 200,000 gallons of water and the carbon equivalent of driving from Los Angeles to New York. So if you think about, just in your corporations, and, we can get into that in a little bit, but let's just use the number 100. So say you have 100 employees and you implement OMD into your corporation, you will be saving annually together 20 million gallons of water and the carbon equivalent of driving from Los Angeles to New York 100 times. So I think a lot of people get, individuals themselves, I think they get really paralyzed in terms of what can they do, really. They think the problem is too big. There's really nothing that little old me can do besides changing my light bulbs or recycling. I can't afford an electric car. I can't afford to put solar in, things like that. But every single time you put food on your plate, you're either helping the environment and your health and the animals and your sex life, if you've seen Game Changers, and, your waistline. So, or you could be putting animal products on your plate, and you could be hurting your health and the environment and the animals and your sex life, if you've seen Game Changers. So it's really something that you can take a step and you can make a difference just by what you're putting on your plate every time you sit down to eat.
So Suzy, how would we scale something like this? There are many CEOs and executives on the call today who might be thinking, that's a personal choice I can make, but food does not affect my business day to day. I'm not in the food industry. I'm not in any supply chain that deals with food or any agricultural farming. So how can those business leaders introduce this plant-based food idea and strategy into their business to look for new opportunities?
Right. Well, I think that, ultimately, every CEO, every corporation, every company is starting to have to look at what is their impact on the environment. And that's one thing. The other thing is they're all looking at, how do we have more productivity? How do we have more attendance? How do we have, lower healthcare costs? The latest number I got on health-related work loss estimated to cost, in companies across the board, $260 billion a year. So and I know that there are a lot of CEOs out there that are starting to create, wellness programs for their employees so that they are dealing with lower health costs and better attendance, better productivity. So this is one of the things that we're working on with OMD is a corporate training program. And not only is this going to be helping with employees and their health and their attendance and their productivity and their mental health. Healthier people are happier people, but corporations have to look at their carbon footprint. And, there is a lot of, you're going out and I say they're going out and buying carbon credits, which is great. Carbon credits, are coming from planting trees and, doing great things for the environment. But the amount of carbon, which I've already shared with you, that you can save from encouraging or implementing just the idea of OMD to your employees. Because asking people, in the end, asking people to go vegan, to go plant-based, 100% is one of the most challenging things in the world. I mean, my husband and Jim and I, we kind of got our rear ends handed to us when we first went plant-based, because we kind of got up on our high horse and we were up on our soapboxes telling everybody, because we felt so great, full of energy. I mean, Julie shared that with us earlier. You just have so much energy. It's probably why I can get up at 4:00 in the morning and, do these kinds of things. But we were just telling everybody, our families, we made bags full of books and DVDs and we sent them out, and people would see us coming and they would turn around and go running the other way because they didn't want to hear it. It was as if we were, born again. But it wasn't until OMD started to be implemented that all of a sudden, when I went out on my book tour, I would go into audiences of maybe 500 or 10,000 or, webinars with 50,000, whatever it was. And I would see this. I would see, body language of do not talk to me about my diet. Do not talk to me about my burger. I want to keep my burger. And the second that you start talking about it's okay, you keep those things, you just change one of your meals a day. And then all of a sudden there was, it's just a relaxing into it. It just dip your toe into it. It's an invitation into trying it out, and just trying it out. You're going to feel better. You're going to be taking care of the environment. And I heard, I can do that. That's doable. When I was with Oprah, she said, well, that's graspable. I can really wrap my brain around that one. And that's what I get day to day. I grew up in Oklahoma. We had a farm. We had cows. We had pigs. We ate them. And I have 3 brothers that are hardcore carnivores, and they do OMD. And I get from my oldest brother, who's really a carnivore, he basically says to me, Suze, so I just want to let you know I'm doing 2 meals a day now. So it's something that's actually attainable to do. And it's not about going, just overnight. It really isn't.
And Suzy, what are you seeing in terms of consumers rewarding brands that are going this route? I have to give it to the millennials. When you start to think about how they have brought into consciousness, everything from what they're washing their hair with, to what clothes they're putting on, to what they're eating. They want transparency. They want to be able to trust their product. They want to know where it's coming from, and they want to know that it's healthy, not only for themselves, but for their children as well. So it's, again, it is the fastest growing, food sector in the food industry. And when you start seeing the beef industry investing in plant-based meats, when you start seeing the dairy industry investing in plant-based milks, it's not a trend. And they are following the consumer request and the consumer behaviors. Right. And you're obviously a very creative person. You've created amazing documentaries, The Game Changer. Not everyone listening today is going to go out and make a documentary to highlight their brand or their cause. So what advice do you have to business leaders of how they can creatively promote their brands against what you've just been saying?
I think it has to do with stories. We all want great stories, and there are so many success stories out there now. I mean, if you look at Beyond Meat and that sort of thing, and the idea that, when you're, kind of like what I was just talking about, when you're starting to see huge industries that are involved in meat and dairy, and they are starting to shift. I mean, there's nothing happier, that makes my heart sing happier is to see this market in the plant-based industry. It was kind of like going along like this, and it's going vertical now. So I think, creating great stories out there. And one of the things, just in terms of what I've experienced in creating, OMD food products, there are 3 components that are really important. So taste. If your kids will eat your food, then you're doing the right thing. You've got to have comparable prices. And, everybody has talked about, well, being plant-based is more expensive. It's actually not. It's based on a peasant diet, out of, the Forks Over Knives is based on the China study, which was a 40-year research project that they did in China. And it was the peasants eating, rice and vegetables and legumes and soybeans and things like that. They were the ones that had the better health. It was the affluent people in China that were they were able to afford meat and dairy, that were having, diseases like cancers and diabetes and heart disease and autoimmune issues. So the comparable prices are, that comes with scale. You just think about the Walkman. The Walkman was so expensive when it first came out. It went to scale, and all of a sudden you could get it for, $20. And the products need to be everywhere, not just in boutique stores. This is a really important thing. They need to go into stores where, all people shop, whether it's Walmart or Costco or, these sort of big box stores. One of the things that, and education, sorry, I want to make sure that I touch on this too. So, being able to educate the public on, not only the environment, and here's a statistic. So producing 100 grams of animal protein emits 90 times the amount of carbon dioxide as 100 grams of pulse protein. And we actually, down here in New Zealand, we were doing some number crunching, and per hectare on our farm, we are able to get 30 tons of vegetables per year per hectare. Whereas if we were farming meat, we would get 1 ton. So you just think about how many people that you can feed on a hectare of land by feeding them veggies as opposed to meat. And the other thing about making businesses stand out and making brands stand out is have fun with it. I mean, that's one of the things that we did with Game Changers. And I don't know how many people have seen it, but, watch it. It's on Netflix. It is fun. And I think the most hilarious scene in it is about sex. And, when, okay, I'm just going to go there. So
you can go there.
You're going to go there. When men have erectile dysfunction, right, it means you don't have good blood flow down there. And if you don't have good blood flow down there, think about what's happening in your heart. right? So if you're going to the urologist because you have that issue, they're going to give you a little blue pill. But what you should be doing is running to your cardiologist, because men over 40 who have had any kind of, erectile dysfunction will have 80% of these men will have a cardiac event within 5 to 8 years. So the long story short is, if you have great blood flow in your heart, you're going to have it down there too. And that goes for you girls out there as well. So it's, we like to call that hot, sex, cool planet, because you're killing a lot of birds with the one stone.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Just one last thing before we move into the breakthrough groups. Is there anything, you've answered it to a degree, but is there anything in the making of the Game Changers that really stood out for you in terms of who you spoke to? Because you had these bodybuilders that everyone thought needed to be on a high-fat meat diet to build up their muscle and their bulk, eating plants and coming up with the same results. So there's obviously proof that it's a good route to follow.
Yeah, I mean, it Game Changers and Forks Over Knives. I mean, there has been we've been bamboozled basically, and we've been advertised to our whole lives about how we need meat to be strong and how we need dairy to have strong bones and teeth. And it's exactly the antithesis. It's not only, not only do we not need it, but it's actually really bad for you. It's the leading cause of cancers, heart disease, diabetes. 1 in 4 adults has diabetes. And that's pretty horrific. But it's, that's one of the things that they talk about in Game Changers, which is, how, and men are targeted more than anything. It's like you can only be manly if you're eating meat. And it couldn't be more wrong. And I'm going to go off onto another little thing right now, because we're all dealing with COVID. Everybody in the world is dealing with COVID. And it's something that, 2 things. One, in terms of talking to CEOs and, bosses of hundreds of thousands, millions of people, being plant-based is going to strengthen your immunity and, help you to ward off these horrible diseases. But the other thing that I don't think a lot of people are aware of is 70 to 80% of all diseases are caused by the exploitation of animals. So if you look at SARS or swine flu, mad cow disease, E. coli, COVID, we're dealing with this now. And I've heard many, many experts talk about, what pandemics will come after this. So that's another reason to really start to pay attention to what's on your plate.
That's really great. And Suzy, I'm going to give you a chance after we come back from the breakthrough groups to summarize today. But I'd like to just move now into the preamble before we get into the breakthrough groups. I'd like to ask Peter Harper, our director of the Real Leaders Impact Collaborative, to have a few words. And then we will have a surprise guest who will be giving us some insights into elevating your voice in 60 seconds before we go into the breakthrough groups. So I'd just like to introduce Peter Harper to you now.
Oh, you're muted.
Peter, you're muted, Peter.
That's a great debut. That's a great debut for me. All right, thank you. I was saying thanks, Grant, and thanks to you, Suzy, as well. So Suzy will join one of the breakthrough groups shortly. But first, I'm going to give you a brief overview. So this Meet the Real Leaders series is sponsored by the Real Leaders Impact Collaborative. In the collaborative, we curate diverse peer advisory groups of 6 to 10 impact CEOs in each group, and we Zoom once a month. And we work together to address each member's most pressing challenge or opportunity in this confidential environment. So if you'd like to learn more about the Impact Collaborative peer groups, if you would, just type info now in the chat room and we'll follow up with you. So we'll shortly go into the breakthrough groups, as I mentioned, to discuss what leadership action we can take as a result of Suzy's talk. You'll need a video connection to participate in the breakthrough room. So if you don't have a video connection, please go ahead and log off now, and we hope to see you next month. If there is a member of the Real Leaders team in your room, they will help facilitate the conversation. Otherwise, we ask that the first person in the room be the timekeeper and moderator, and please make sure everyone gets a turn. So a maximum of 2 minutes per person. Your group will have a total of 20 minutes. So if you take up to 2 minutes to, number one, share your name, location, organization, and one sentence impact goal. Number two, share what problem you're currently trying to solve in your business. Number three, what you've learned from Suzy's talk just now that might help solve this problem. And four, finally, share what business opportunities stood out for you during this discussion around plant-based food. When everyone has shared their thoughts, and if time allows, share ways that you might collaborate with each other. Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had some great discussions. And I would now just like to ask Suzy to summarize with some final thoughts. Suzy, you were in one of the breakthrough groups. I'm sure there were some interesting ideas that went on from your original thoughts and ideas in the speech you gave us earlier. Was there anything new or any new angle we should be thinking of as business leaders right now? Can you give us some summary of what you learned and also some actionable tips of what people can do as a next step?
I think the thing that stood out more than anything was that you don't have to be perfect. You know, that you can just dip your toe in. And, you know, Carolyn actually shared, you know, people always trying to poke holes in things that we're doing. You know, if you're saying that you're vegan or you're plant-based or you're, you know, trying to be more environmental. But the thing is, you just start somewhere, just take that first step. And, you know, I think the other thing too around just the excitement around the plant-based business and investments, it's kind of like getting into the internet in 1994. So that's the excitement that's happening today. And the more that you can, you know, even if you're not in the food sector, but realizing that, you know, the more you can take that step, whether you're doing it yourself, in your home, in your corporation, being able to inspire people just to do OMD. And again, I'm going to go through it. One person changing one of their meals a day to a plant-based meal for 1 year saves 200,000 gallons of water and the carbon equivalent of driving from Los Angeles to New York. So it doesn't matter why you're going plant-based, whether you're doing it for the environment or for your health or for the animals or for your waistline or for your sex life or for pandemics, whatever it is, just know that you're always helping. And again, I want to reiterate that we are creating a corporate OMD program to be able to help implement. So, you know, feel free to reach out if this is something that you want to bring into your corporations, and being able to, you know, work with climate scientists and really push out there how much carbon you're saving, how much water you're saving, and being able to quantify your healthcare costs as well.
Fantastic. We only have an hour here today, which is obviously very short, but of course you have your new book, The OMD Plan. Have you got a copy there you can show us?
You know, I only have the New Zealand one. So
is there a special New Zealand edition?
There is, because it's all in kilometers and liters and grams and
okay.
and that sort of thing.
Right.
But this is really, when you think about, we're going to all be gone, okay? But our children are going to continue on. And one day they're going to turn back and they're going to say, what did those grown-ups do to make a change? Because it's the grown-ups that have made a huge mess. So this is one of those things that we can do to help make the world a better place for our children to grow up in and their children to grow up in. And if we don't do something for the environment today, right now, next time you decide to eat, it won't matter if we have sustainable clothes or electric cars or solar or sustainable schools, any of those things. We have to move quickly. Julie, you said it earlier. We have to move together and we have to move quickly. And this is one of those things. I don't know how many people are on. Grant, do you have an idea?
Who are on the call right now?
Yeah.
We have just under 50.
Okay. So think about all of you committing to just changing one of your meals a day and multiply that out by, saving 200,000 gallons of water and the carbon equivalent of driving from Los Angeles to New York. And just this group alone, how much we can save in 1 year. So do it.
I'm sure we're all inspired now. And Suzy, as a final thought, how can the Real Leaders community best support your endeavors? Where can we get in touch if we'd like to help or get involved? And do you have any final call to action you would like to share that would be able to help your cause further? My goal is I always think of OMD as Meatless Mondays on steroids. Because all of a sudden you go from 3 meals a day that's really just talking about meat to seven meals in a week, and just the savings of that. So I'm always looking for partners who want to help take OMD to the next level and bring it to a really global platform. So anyone that, is interested in doing something like that. And again, if you want help with your corporations and, bringing in leadership into your corporations to help implement OMD. And what's the best way of people to get in touch with you? Through your website?
Yes, probably through the website is the easiest.
Okay. And what is that address?
That is omdfortheplanet.com.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, Suzy, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be sending out a summary of today's discussion from all the groups and from Suzy's talk to everyone in the next week, so you can be further inspired by the conversations you didn't hear in the other groups. As a reminder, I'd like to remind you that joining the Real Leaders Impact Collaborative is a great idea to continue these discussions on a regular basis. It is confidential. It is a great advisory resource as a CEO and as a business leader. Once again, if you didn't hear it earlier, if you'd like to type the word info into the chat box now, and somebody will get in touch with more information. I'd like to thank everyone for being part of the Real Leaders community today, and we hope you're inspired enough to go out and make a positive difference in the world, while still making it profitable, of course. Please join us next month in May when Lord Michael Hastings will be joining us for the next session of Meet the Real Leaders. The former head of corporate global citizenship of KPMG will speak to us about how to strengthen markets through social impact. Later this year, you can look forward to Raja Rajamanar, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at MasterCard. We'll be speaking to Jack Sim, who has just completed the building of a World Trade Center for the Poor in Singapore. Dr. Nancy O'Reilly, who will be talking on the power of diversity and building a successful business. And then on the 28th of July, we'll be hosting iconic environmentalist, Dr. Jane Goodall, who will join us to talk about why good for the environment is also good for business. Please join us on our social media platforms and subscribe to our global magazine and podcast, where you will find more inspirational leadership advice. So thank you very much to everyone here today, and thank you for everything you are doing to transform our world. Thank you.
Thank you.